Peace, family. Yeah, we got started a little late. So one of my brothers asked me, like I said, we always got to high cap and give some real history. So for this night, little cap, we're going to give a little history of 100 amazing facts about the Negro. We're going to be quoting from Salam, brother. Salam. We're going to be quoting from 100 amazing facts about the Negro. And I told my brothers and sisters, we're going to be highlighting books and just I challenge everybody to research. And I'm not here for no religious perspective or no religious dogma. I know who I am, and I challenge you to know who you are. And that's what this science and being no more is all about. The divine and national aspect of it. But I'm not here to argue or debate with anyone. But I'm an author. I'm an adapt. I do have literature and I do have books. And if anyone is interested in getting the literature, I give the information how the literature can be bought. And I'm also going to give a little history about how the American prophet Noble Ali was recognized and wrote about and heard of, and the science and wisdom was taught all over. And I'm going to give a little intro of a book by Peter Lamborn Wilson, Sacred Drift, Essays on the Margins of Islam. And these are books, if you can research them, I think on Amazon it costs about $100 or $200. But I have these books and I print them on my print press for my students, for my adults and my young youth, because this science should be spread. And that's what I'm here to do. That's why most of my lectures and most of my live teachings, they're on college campuses, And right now, with the blessings from my family and everything, especially my mother and my father and my empress, we have our own school. We're meeting at the YMCA, but hopefully in the next few months we'll have our own building and we'll be able to teach from a historical and from a historical perspective, from a scholarly perspective of history, spirituality, all across the board. But before we jump into this, family, we're gonna just play one of my songs. I love music. I love hip hop, and but I'm gonna play one of my songs by Dead Prez. It's an old hip hop song. The next lecture I'm gonna be speaking on, we're gonna be talking about gematria. We're gonna be speaking on some of the Hebrew codes that's in the biblical scriptures, in Deuteronomy, and some of the 5 books of the biblical scriptures that you can connect if you understand what gematria is. Thank you, Empress. But before we even jump into this wisdom, let me play this little music if I can do a couple things. We're gonna get started. Hey, you crazy. I should turn the camera on you over there dancing. Where my sage at? I'm not a hunter, but I'm told that in places like in the Arctic, where indigenous people sometimes might hunt a wolf, they'll take a double-edged blade and they'll put blood on the blade and they'll melt the ice and stick the handle in the ice so that only the blade is protruding, and that a wolf will smell the blood and wants to eat, and it'll come and lick the blade trying to eat. And what happens is when the wolf licks the blade, of course, he cuts his tongue and he bleeds and he thinks he's really having a good day. He drinks and he licks and of course he's drinking his own blood and he kills himself. That's what the imperialists did to us with Christ came. You got these young brothers out there thinking that they're getting something that they're gonna make a living with. They're getting something they can buy a car like the white people have cars. Why can't I have a car? They're getting something that they can get a piece of gold. The white people have gold. Why can't I have gold? They're getting something to get a house. The white people have a house. Why can't I have a house? And they actually think that it's something that's bringing resources to them, but they're killing themselves just like the wolf who's licking the blade and just slowing it down without knowing. That's what's happening to the community. You with me on that? That's exactly and precisely what happens to the community. And instead of blaming the hunter who put the damn handle and the blade in the ice for the wolf, then what happens is the wolf gets blamed for trying to live. That's what happens in our community. You don't blame the person, the victim, you blame the oppressor. Imperialism, white power is the enemy. Was the enemy
That's that Wolf intro, man. It's just old music, you know? Just old music. My brother's like, man, bless you too, man. Islam, brother. Islam, fam. We getting ready to get started. Islam. Oh yeah, we gonna put one more thing in the atmosphere and we good. Let's get this one started.
And because Africa has been in the hands of people who have created an image of Africa that's negative and hateful. And it has been hateful to us. We haven't wanted to identify with it. But now that Africa is getting independent and in a position to create its own image, and it's a positive image, those of us in the West look at the African image and see how positive it is. We begin to identify with it. We become proud of Africa, and we become proud of our African blood, our African heritage.
Be proud of our heritage. Somebody said earlier tonight, we don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day.
Give us the teaching of Marcus Garvey, Cameron Nicholas, glory of kings. If I Selassie and keep the blood of the blue eyes for yourself, cause people without a vision perish like suicide. You tell me it's not about color, still you refuse to take the picture off the wall. Oh, yeah. All you do is trick the brothers, keep them confused. They don't know who to call on in this ironical war. And you tell me of what paradise in the sky, but that's a lie. And you tell me I was born in sin and she
You were born in sin.
when love created I. Look how many prophets tried to open our eyes. You can't fool me. No, no. Look how they're treating us. This new millennium slavery. I see them hiding the chains and still beating us daily. And now we're mentally rising to fight the black skin. And I'm reaching at the ending, far out and far in. Sin, you tell me it's not about color, still you refuse to take the images out the books. I know that's not how we look, Kush. Don't take offense when we show black power. It carries us through. We've been abused. Just like the mushrooms. And the take me of a paradise in the sky.
That's a lie, y'all. Let's vibe with me.
I was born in sin and
You was born in sin? That's a lie. Lord created us. Look how many prophets died already.
To open our eyes, you can't fool me.
Then why would you want to go there and Ethiopia?
Well, I feel it's my duty to give my profession and, if necessary, my life in the cause of Ethiopia.
And I, the soil and the happy to die for the defense of entire Africa, including Abyssinia.
Look how they're treating us. This new millennium slavery. I see them hiding chains and still beating us daily. And now we mentally poison to fight with black skin. And bleaching and the looting, far out and far in. Sin, you tell me it's not about color, still you refuse to take the picture off.
Vibe with me, vibe with me. Refuse to take it off the wall.
All you do is trick the brothers, keep them confused. They don't know who to call. is a spiritual war. So now tell me of a paradise in the sky that has a light. And I was born in sin and shaped in iniquity. Love create I and I. Look how many prophets tried to open our eyes.
Told a lie.
Can't fool me.
They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonym for the word black. It's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white, it's always something pure. But I want to get the language right tonight. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry. Yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
And we get the context. Yes, black is beautiful, but it's not a nationality. Yes, black is beautiful. Red is beautiful. Orange is purple is beautiful. All those in the color spectrum that comes from black. Because everything from the darkness come to light. So yes, black is beautiful. But we must understand that black is not a nationality. But everything from the color spectrum comes from dark to light. Not the other way around that was taught in pseudo-academia. And we just have to understand that science. So, we're going to teach, I told brothers and sisters, we're going to teach a little bit. I'm going to give you some history about the Sacred Drift. These one of the books that I print. You can order it, but, you can order it from myself. We have a lot of books that we print on our printing press. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about just some 100 amazing facts concerning the Negro. We're going to talk about that. And I challenge brothers and sisters to get your pencils and your papers. We're going to do our Moorish prayer and then our proclamation, and then we're going to get started. But I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical agitating speeches while at work or in the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be a severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, my 2 cents, health, and wealth. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, that's esoterically and exoterically, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah, which is arm, leg, arm, head, which is nothing outside of yourself, for our unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the laws laid down to us by our prophet. If we lose confidence in our prophet, we should turn in our card, our button, cease wearing our turban and our fez. Cease wearing our turban and our fez, and return to the state where we were found. This is a holy and divine movement. And I repeat eloquently with a silver tongue, this is a holy and divine movement founded by our American prophet, Noble Drew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. That's esoterically and exoterically Moors. The prophet therefore is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that we do our part in protecting the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet Noble Drew Ali through the will of Allah to redeem his people to their sinful ways, or from our sinful ways. And I mean, it's just what it is. I put things in the atmosphere. I pray that I think peace, speak peace, and that I am peace. I pray that I think truth, that I speak truth, and that I am truth. I pray that I think love, that I speak love, and that I am love. I pray everything I attract, I pray everything you attract carries harmonious vibrations and intentions. May the light within me, may the light within you serve as a beacon for those that need it. Amen. Amin Ra, Aya Asha Aya, Shalom Malakim, Shalom, Shalom. All those words that you may use to give that higher essence manifestation of your self-praise. So be it. So let it be. But we're not even going to be long with this one today. I'm just going to give you a little intro of The Sacred Drift by Peter Lambert Wilson. And it goes highlight to my brothers and sisters in the Moorish Orthodox Church of America. I'm just going to give you some intro. We can't stand it because we're talking about a specific topic today. But I'm going to highlight our prophet, and then I'm going to get into the teaching. I'm going to show you in the book how they have Noble Drew Ali in the book, The Sacred Drift. The prophet around the cover of the book. Right here, we're showing some historical things, and I'm gonna tell you what they're saying about our prophet. This is the stuff that they have at the Holy Orthodox Moorish Church. Prophet Noble Drew Ali, founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America, 4 years before his death, posing formally as prophet, sharif, and mason. Let me repeat. Prophet Noble Drew Ali, founder of Moorish Science Temple of America, 1925, 4 years before his death, posing formally as prophet, sharif, and mason, from who was Noble Drew Ali, by Isa al-Madid. So we don't let nobody connotate us with lies and things. You can research our American prophet all through when we talk about this science. And it's adapt wisdom. A person just don't want you to know, and they buy up the breadcrumbs from you and get you caught up in spookism. The lost found Moorish timeline in the wilderness of North America. In that picture, and I'm reading from page 15, the image, crumbling 1920s, photograph of an American black man dressed in robe. Excuse me, family. Hold on. But American black man dressed in robe, sash, and fez, posing formally, hand on breast, like Napoleon. Label, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, 1886 to 1926. To recover the meaning of the obscure and enigmatic portrait, we must rediscover or secret portion of our own history. For American history is defined for us as much by its absence and disappearance as by its official presence. Indeed, perhaps even so more Moors. The official source described Noble Drew Ali as founder of the first black Islamic sect in America. In truth, he was less than this, for there were black Muslims, we know that, here before him, we understand that. But he was also more than this, just some regular man. He was an American prophet. And I step from the pages of Melville or Ishmael, read, a thought of Allah clothed in the flesh, a fact, a poetic fact. Timothy Drew was born most probably January 8, 1886. And when I show you other documents about the Cherokee Moor, about certain figures, I can show you, we know the bloodline and the family. It's no mystery. I'm on the Cherokee Indians. So it's certain things that we have to connect. According to a privately published essay by Ravana Bey of the Moorish Academy of Chicago, Drew's father was said to have been of Moorish extraction, his mother of Cherokee ancestry. By the early 1880s, Ravana Bey claims that the Drew family has settled in Newark, New Jersey, where they are said to have met and studied with the master adept Jamal al-Din Al-Afghani in 1838 to 1897, who visited the U.S. in the winter of 1882 and 1883 Moors. The Jews were not only initiated, the Jews were not only initiated into the Salafia Afghani's political reform movement, but also into the Brethren of Purity, the Akhwan, the Al-Safa. According to most authors, Drew knew nothing of any deeper mysteries until his visit to the Oriented, sometime before 1912. Age 16, he shipped out as a merchant seaman. Some say he took a job as a magician in a traveling circus. He is also said to have worked as a railway expressman while you taking bags for tips on the railways, and somehow ended up in Egypt. There he met the last priest of an ancient court of high magic who took him to the pyramid of the Cheops, or Cheops, Cheops, led him in blindfolded and abandoned him. So, that's the allegory, that's the story. In 1912 and 13, age 27, in New York, New Jersey, he had the visions and prophecies. And Noble Ali, blacks are Asiatics, specifically Moors, that are descendants of the biblical Moabites, Amorites, Amorites, through the prophetess Ruth, later the inhabitants of Western Africa or Morocco, which Noble Ali taught a sort of spiritual homeland or promised land like Ethiopia for the Rastafarians, which in ancient writings is Abyssinia. So we could connect all those dots, man. The ancestors were Canaanites, and that Ham, or Adonian, as the Masons call him, father of Canaan, was present at the building of Solomon's temple. Thus, he called the first center of Moorish science Newark, the Canaanite temple. But the hypotheses of a Moorish origin for at least some American blacks has been taken upon by historians inspired by such as Ivan Van Sertima, Sheikh Anta Diop, G. Jackson, Gerald Massey. It's so many. What they asked happened to the Moors of Spain after 1492. They were forcibly converted to catechism and were known as Moriscos when you research the doctrine of discovery and other historical writings. However, some enslaved. Soon after 1492, the Spanish were sending black slaves to the New World, some of whom are known to have been Moors or Moriscos. In some writings, some authors have suggested that Moors and other Africans may have reached the New World before Columbus. The work of Ishmael Reeves before Columbus Foundation deals with such questions, family. Whether the case, clearly Moorish Muslims were among the first discoverers of America. Moorish science, however, propagates a more colorful and less sustainable image of the Moorish Empire. So we can go on and on with that wisdom, but it's getting ready to be history time, and I want brothers and sisters to really understand a little bit of history, and I challenge you to study. Research this science. The Negro. First, and maybe tomorrow, tomorrow at I say 3 o'clock Arizona time, which is 5, we're going to highlight the film and the history of the Africans of Asia. But the ancient Negro gods of the Old and New World, the Sphinx, or the Sphinx, distinctly Negroid, especially the mouth, the uraxis of the forehead, is a sign of divinity. It's a lot of things that we don't see and things that's hidden. That's in museums and things. When we don't understand what figures and things and who built certain monuments. We talk about people in history, man. So let's dig a little bit of with this history, then we're gonna done. We're gonna talk about, and we'll be done, we'll talk about the arts, like the Negro was the first artist. The oldest drawings are carvings, yet discovered were executed by the Negro peoples over 15,000 years ago in South France, Northern Spain, Palestine, South Africa, and India. The drawings are on rock, the carvings on bone, basalt, and ivory. When you research the Africans in Asia, when a lot of the stories are written in stone. The oldest known representation of the human body is that of a Negro woman, and it was carved by a Negro sculptor of Grimaldi race from 10,000 to 15,000 years ago. It is called the Venus of the Willendorf. Research that, the Venus of the Willendorf, after the place in Austria where it was found, and it is in the Vienna Museum. Beethoven, the world's greatest musician, was without a doubt a dark mulatto. He was called the Black Spaniard. His teacher, the immortal Joshua Haydn, who wrote the music for the former Australian national anthem, was colored too. Just like Alice Pushkin, the Russian author and poet was Moor. Born in Africa, in Congo, on the calendars of Mexicans until 1872. This was a Moor. I'm telling you. 112 years after his death. That's how long his stuff lasted. Ancient civilizations. The Grimaldi, a Negro race, lived in Europe as late as 12,000 years ago. 2 complete Grimaldi skeletons are in the Museum of Research everything I say. Near Monte Carlo, abundant traces of culture have been unearthed in southern and central Europe. Elma, a mighty Negro civilization of Persia, flourished about 2900 BC, and is perhaps older than Egypt or Ethiopia. One of his later Negro kings, Kudur Kanuta, Kudur, Kata, dark as the curtains of Kedar or Kedor, Chaldea and Babylon, and brought back to his capital, Susa, rich treasures, among which was the famous statue of the goddess Nana, N-A-N-A. Later it became the capital of Osiris the Great and Darius. Susa in the Shushan of the Bible, where Esdra, the Jewish, sought the favor of King Ahasuerus of Persia and Ethiopia. Cheops, C-H-E-O-P-S, a Negro, built the Great Pyramid, Moors, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It is 451 feet high, has 2,500,000 blocks of granite, each 1.5 tons, covering 13 acres, took 100,000 men 30 years to build, and was complete in 3,730 BC. There were at least 18 Ethiopian or unmixed Negro rulers of ancient Egypt, the best known of which is Panaka or Panaki, P-I-A-N-K-H-I, leaving his own country in Central Africa. Moors. Panaki, P-I-A-N-K-H-I, conquered all Egypt to the mouth of the Nile in 750 BC. The Ganges, the G-A-N-E-S, the sacred river of India, is named after an Ethiopian king of the name who conquered Asia as far as this river. Moors. The most ancient lineage in the world is the Ethiopian royal family. It is said to be older than that of King George by 6,130 years. The Emperor Haile Selassie I, ruler of Ethiopia, traces his ancestry to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and beyond that of Cush, 6,280 BC. Negroes lived in America thousands of years before Columbus. Moors. Central American monuments show numerous carvings of them and gods. When Columbus came to the New World, Negroes had been crossing from Africa to South America, a distance of 1,600 miles, family. Let me see, do I got one of my, hold on. West Africa before Europe and other addresses delivered in England. We could talk about a lot of historical stuff And that's why I say I come from a historical perspective. We're not here to argue. But the first white man, per se, to reach the American mainland, tell of seeing Negroes. Columbus, who visited South America, said that he had heard of them there. The present Negro race of Africa perhaps did not originate there, but Asian and Oceania. The earliest inhabitants of Africa were not black, but brown. Follow me. Today, the people of mixed and unmixed Negro descents living in Asia and Oceania probably exceeded in number the present Negro population of Africa. India had millions of Negroes. The purest Negro types are in southern Asia, Moors. When I give you the history of the Africans of Asia, the Nagas people, when I show you how the young boy was in a spelling bee and they said spell Nagas, and he didn't know what he was talking about, and they gave a definition when he told them who the Nagas was and how he spelled it. In 1923, Dr. Joseph Rock, United States Department of Agriculture, discovered a Negroid race, the Nakis, the Nakhis, 200,000 in number, in southern China. In 1934, E.W.P. Chinnery discovered an unknown Negro people in New Ghana, near Australia. He reports that they had a civilization superior to their neighbors who lived under white rulership. In the United States Army drafts in World War I, the Negro proved physically fitter than the white, and this is just history. For every 100 men physically examined, the ratio of colored men found physically qualified for the general military service was substantially higher than that ratio of the white man by just 5%, namely 74.60 against 69.71. Illiteracy and intelligence. The peoples of the South, of the Southern Europe, including Italy, and most of those of Eastern Europe, including Russia, are more illiterate than the Negroes of the United States. In 70 years, Negroes' illiteracy has fallen about 80%. In 1870, it was 82%. In 1930, it was 16.3%. Afro-American illiteracy is 3 times higher than of white ones. Nevertheless, when certain states are matched against certain others, you know what I'm saying? There are surprising comparisons. For instance, the Negroes of Carolina, Minnesota, New York, Nevada, South Dakota, Oregon, and Washington are less illiterate than that of native whites. The white partridge of Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, etc. I hope y'all know what I'm talking about. So let's dig with the exploration aspect of history. We come from a historical aspect. Estevanco, a Negro from Morocco. Moors, when I tell you, when I get Morocco as it is, when I give you history of those books, when I show you how when brothers in history they traveled and they documented wars and they told you who was in Morocco in these certain areas and what they look like. You know, you don't have to let nobody connotate you with wisdom. The wisdom is already written. So I come from a historical perspective, Moors. That's all. But the exploration about Estevanco, a Negro from Morocco, was one of a party of 4 to cross the Northern American continent in 1536 for the first time. The journey took 9 years, family. In 1539, he headed an expedition that discovered Arizona and New Mexico. Moors, when I tell you from a historical perspective, when I was researching in the doctoral libraries, and when I was blessed to go to the Grand Canyons, to the deserts per se, and they got all of the pyramids and the statues of the Egyptians right here in the Americas. Egypt right here in America in the Grand Canyons. You don't believe me? You can research this. This stuff was for years in the newspapers in Arizona. Years right here in the Americas. Research it. Statues, everything, pharaohs, everything, gold, everything, all of it. But Estevanco's travels served to open up the southwest and the states west of Florida as far as the Pacific. The founder of the city of Chicago was Baptiste Point de Sabelle, a Negro in 1779. When me and my wife went to Chicago, I took a picture right in front of it. They got a picture of him right downtown when everybody be going shopping. I think that's on Michigan Ave. They got the statue of the brother right there. It's been there for the longest. That's historical, brothers. Don't we know that? But brothers don't take pictures of that history and that wisdom. It's there. Right in the heart of Chicago, when brothers be talking about history ain't there. It is. It's there right in your face. If anybody in Chicago asks them, is that statue right out there? I bet you it is. Tip, a Negro trader and slaves in ivory from Zanzibar, East Africa, was the first civilized man to penetrate the center of Africa. He explored territory nearly as large as the United States. Stanley Weisenham, Cameron, and other white explorers followed his path. He died in 1905, very rich. Research that history. This is the stuff I teach my kids in our teaching, where they stand strong and they understand history. For 2,234 years, human beings had been trying to reach the top of the world. Thousands of lives and millions of dollars were lost in the attempt. On April 6, 1909, Matthew Henson, a New York Negro, was the first of a party of 6 to do so. He is now in 1943 the only human being alive to have stood there. The first Arctic explorer was Pytheas, a Greek who perished in the attempt in 325 BC. Science and invention. Jan Ernest Matzeliger, Jan Ernest Matzeliger, a Dutch West Indian Negro living in Lynn, Massachusetts, invented the first machine for sewing the soles of shoes to the uppers. This invention, which was 11 years in the making, revolutionized the industry and gave shoe supremacy to the United States. It made several millionaires, one of whom left $4 million to Harvard University. You know? He left a few stocks when he died to a white church, which later saved it from being sold for debt. Research the wisdom. I come from history and no religious dogma. George Washington Carver of Tuskegee Institute, one of the world's greatest agriculture chemists, was awarded the Roosevelt Medal in 1939 for distinguished service in the field of science. From the peanut, he has extracted 285 products, and from the sweet potato 118 from the sweet potato. When brothers be talking about they Rhodes scholars and don't even know the history of who Cecil Rhodes was and what he stood for. But Dr. Carver was born a slave. Thomas Edison once offered him a large salary to take charge of one of the Edison laboratories, but Carver refused to continue the work he had begun with Booker T. Washington at the Tuskegee Institute. And that's what I'm doing now. I have a real institution. I have a real non-profit, spiritual, religious, and educational. I have real literature that I have written. And I ask brothers and sisters for donations, because once we're here and we have our own schooling and things, we're going to teach. And it's going to be free for the public. Jews and Ethiopians, get your pens. The Mohammedans believe that Moses was a black man, right? Their Bible. The Quran says so, right? God told Moses to put his hand in his bosom. The Quran says that it came out white. The commentators declared that Moses' hand could not have been white before, and that the miracle Jehovah, we talk about their writings, intended was making the black skin white and then turning it back again. The Septuagint, the Bible, agrees with the Quran if you're a historian and a linguistic and you remove all religious dogma and feeling and understand the language, what's being written. The characters of the Bible are largely Negroes. The Jews were slaves to the Egyptians for nearly 430 years, they say. Only 70 Jews went to Egypt with Jacob. The Bible says that 600,000 men left with Moses, which according to which according to Haushofer, this is a writer, meant a total of 3,154,000 with women and children. For this large number to have left mixing with the Egyptians who were black must have taken place on a vast scale, family. About 12 million Negroes were brought to the New World. So imagine how much of their original color and culture the latter would have taken with them should they return to Africa. And you realize how much of the original Jew remained in only the 70 Jews after the centuries. Just research the writings. Tacitus, Roman historian of 90 AD, says that the Romans of his day believed that the Jews, which then abandoned in Europe, came from Ethiopia, the land of the blacks. The present white color of the Ethiopian or the European and American Jews is very likely due to the same cause as their fair skin and straight hair of large numbers of Negroes. The Bible classes the Ethiopian and Jews together. Are ye not as the children of Ethiopia unto me, O children of Israel? Saith the Lord. Chaldea, the land in which the Jews originated, was also a Negro land. Hence Abraham might also have been black. We're just talking about what's written. The Phalashes or the Phalashes or Negro Jews of Ethiopia, led by Queen Judith, put the line of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba off the throne of Ethiopia in 937 AD and ruled for 40 years. The Phalashes asserted that they are the original Jews. They called themselves what? The Beta Israel, or the chosen people. But I'm going to show the Negro Jews of India are not permitted to enter the same synagogue as the white ones, nor to bury their dead in the same cemeteries. Just like by genetics, the Jews are the Igbo and the Igbo. One of the brothers was asking me earlier about the fez and the turban. When I tell you the history about Wentworth Matthews and the Moors and the Hebrews, it's all brothers. When I show you the language, when I show you pictures and stuff of what the brothers was teaching their kids, they were teaching Moorish Latin. They were teaching Hebrew. Look at the pictures of the brothers, of the babies. Look what they're teaching. Look what's being taught. But let me show you what I'm going to read something to you. Rabbi Ford in a turban. Turbans were commonly used in black spiritual churches and signified the mystical East. When used by black religious magical workers. Let me repeat. Rabbi Ford in a turban. Turbans were commonly used in black spiritual churches and signified the mystical East. What Noble Drew Ali told you, if these Moors don't understand that when I say adapts and understanding what the triple rows of the adapt chamber is all about. But turbans were commonly used in the black spiritual churches and signified the mystical East when used by black religious magical workers. I mean, so we can connect the wisdom all over the dots, man. We just don't know about the history and what and how we were brought. And just because you have a culture, everybody's under one flag, you know. And that was and if we don't know that, the Moorish flag is only one flag, and we don't strip nobody from their culture. You know what I'm saying? We teach. When I hear brothers be saying they Hebrew Israelites and they try to differentiate themselves, say it's one flag. Don't you know, 1948, Israel was created out of the state and all this stuff was here? I'm going to show you something. That's why when I put on my chart, so I'm going to read something to you. Rabbi Mordecai Herman and the Moorish Zionist Temple of the Moorish Jews in 1920, Haarlem's photographed by James Van D. Z. And in the back you will see the Moorish Zionist Temple of the Moorish Jews. You will see the American flag and a so-called 6-point flag in the background. When I tell brothers Oh, let me move my libation before I knock it over. Let me, for my brothers that be thinking it's something different, when you getting connotated, because brother's not telling you real wisdom. You see that in the back of the brother? You see that flag? And they connotate that Israel flag. This is 1928, before Israel was created as a state. I'm telling you when we talk about stuff that we should know. You see, we got his stole on. I usually have my stole on that Wentworth Matthews have on in the middle. That's all our stuff, man. It's connotated. I'm telling you, man. So let's get back to the teaching. We almost done. In medicine, Imhotep of ancient Egypt was the real father of medicine. He lived about 2,300 BC. Greece area from him, Moors. In Rome, he was worshipped as the Prince of Peace in the form of a black man. His Ethiopian portrait showed him a Negro. Imhotep was also prime minister to King Zoser, Z-O-S-E-R, as well as the foremost architect of his time. The saying, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, has been traced to him. Hippocrates, the so-called father of medicine, lived 2,000 years after Imhotep. Family? Ibn Ali, an African Negro, was private physician to Charles VII, King of France, from 1403 to 1465. And when the king fell dangerously ill at Toso, Ibn Ali was sent for and he cured him. Thereafter, the king made him a member of his suite. Dr. C. Tarvis, an African Negro, was the private physician to King Charles I of Portugal until latter's death in 1908. Dr. Daniel Williams, Chicago surgeon who died in 1931, was the first to perform a successful operation on the human heart. Research this wisdom. When I say we come from royalty, education, wisdom, science, all come from wars and wisdom. France had 6 colored cabinet ministers. Severino de Heradi, Severiano Deheredia, in 1887. Senator Henry Lemery, Henri Lemeri, from 1915 to 1918 and 1934. Alcide Delmont, Alcide Delmont, 1928. Blasi Diagmi, or Diagni, Blaise Diagne, 1931. Gratian Candace, 1932. Gaston Morville in 1937. De Hardy, as Minister of the Public Works, built some of France's finest roads. Eugene Chin, one of the most dynamic political figures of the present century and Minister of Foreign Affairs for China in 1927, was born of Chinese Negro percentage in Trinidad, West Indies in 1878. He was also secretary to Dr. Sun Yat-sen, first president of China, Moors. We got to understand this science when we talk about race mixing. Persina, a queen of Ethiopia in 60 BZ, presented her husband, Hydaspes, Hydaspes, with a light-colored child, which color is strange among Ethiopians. She declared that it was due to the presence of a white statue in the room. We're talking about this wisdom and these stories. Anna, a Negro servant girl of Calvisio, Italy, wife of a white mule driver, became the concubine of Pope Clement VII. Her son, Alessandro, born 1511, became reigning Duke of Florence and married Marguerite, only daughter of the Emperor Charles V, ruler of Germany. the Netherlands, Austria, and Spain in 1536. White American slaveholders used to induce white women to marry Negro slaves in order to hold the woman slaves for life. So this is just history. Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States and father of the Declaration of Independence, was the father of a large number of mulatto children. His wife protests loud and long to no avail. Patrick Henry, another signer of that document, had a Negro son named Mel Canston, Melanchthon. Research this wisdom. Napoleon planned to solve the color problem in Haiti by making it legal for each man to take 3 wives, one white, one mulatto, the other black. He had several conferences with the theologians on this grand measure and tried to win the consent of the Pope. Research this wisdom. In 1787, while a party of 351 freed Negroes was aboard ship Portsmouth, England, en route to Sierra Leone, West Africa, the authorities brought on board 62 white women, prostitutes, and others whom they wished to get rid of, and married them to as many men and sent them off to be the future mothers of the colonies. I hope you're following the wisdom. My empress like dinner almost done, so I'm about to go eat. But in 1850s, Miss Liban, Leybon, an English woman, was queen of the slave traders at Rio Pongo, of the principal slave post in West Africa. She had a fort armed with cannon and armed by 300 devoted blacks. She had 3 mulatto children by a Negro, a boy and 2 girls. One of the later married a white slave trader and the other a British consul. The Countess de Bois Hanaris, who was related by marriage to Napoleon, married a full-blooded Haitian Negro named Castina, Castaing, who was a member of the Paris Convention of 1792 to 1795. So let's talk about religion. The oldest, most noted statue in the world bears the face of a Negro. What is it? The Sphinx in Giza, or Gaza, which was worshipped as Horus. Harmachis, Harmachis, the sun god of light and life. It was erected about 5000 BC. The devil, which is now depicted as black, was once portrayed as white. When the black man dominated the planet, he painted the forces of evil white. When the whites came into power, they shifted the color. But as late as 1500, the Ethiopians still depicted their gods and heroes blacks. When you research a Russian icon by Vladimir Ivanov, when you just start researching stuff in museums, I'm going to show you some stuff from a museum in a minute. And their devils and villains, white. Father Ferdinand, a Catholic missionary who worked amongst them, at this time says they paint Christ, the Blessed Virgin, and other saints in black form, and the devils and wicked men white. And wicked men wicked men white. Thus Christ and his apostles are black, and Judas white. Annas, Caiaphas, Pilate, Herod, Jews are white, while Michael is black and the devil white. Nearly all of the ancient gods of the old and new world were black and had woolly hair. Buckley says, from the woolly texture of the hair, I am inclined to assign to the Buddha of India. When I talk about the Africans of Asia, the Nagas people, I'm going to play that film tomorrow. The Funi, or the Fuhi, the Fuhi of China, the Aksa, the Xaha of the Japanese, and the Quetzalcoatl. I might be pronouncing it wrong. The Quetzalcoatl of the Mexicans. The same Moors, the same and indeed an African, or rather a Nubian origin. In the Bible, Moors, God, or the Ancient of Days, is described as having hair like pure wool. The earliest statues of the Virgin Mary and Christ in Europe, as far north, Russia, were black as Negroid. The Bible really originated in ancient Egypt. where their population, according to Herodotus, their pen, and Aristotle, was black. Here the Jews received almost all of their early culture. Professor Breasted, leading Egyptologist, the right social and moral development of mankind in the Nile Valley, which is 3,000 years older than that of the Hebrew, contribute essentially to the formation of Hebrew literature. Our moral heritage, therefore, derived from a wider human past, enormously older than the Hebrews, and it has come to us rather through the Hebrews than from them. Come on. Psalms that read like those of the Bible were written by a pharaoh. Amenophis, Amenophis, better known as who? Akhenaten, the heretic king, 1300 BC, or more than 400 years before David was born. Akhenaten, who was the father of Tutankhamun, was extremely Negro in type. He is called the most remarkable of the pharaohs. Ethiopians, that is Negroes, gave to the world that first idea of right and wrongs, and thus laid the basis of religion and of all the culture of civilization. Moors, the earliest exposition of this yet found is in the so-called Memphis drama, where it's known only through a copy on a slab of a basket made by order of an Ethiopian king in 700 BC. But my Moors, that's 99th rank. We have this wisdom. There were 3 African popes of Rome: Victor, 189 and 199 AD; Melchiades, Melchiades, 311 to 312; and St. Galgius, Galgius, Gelasius, in 496 AD. It was who led Christianity to final triumph after the Roman Empire. The celestial saint of Germany is Saint Maurice, a pure Negro, while in command of Rome Legion in Gaul, which is Switzerland, in 287 AD. He refused to attack the Christians when ordered to do so by the Emperor Maximum Hercules, for which he was killed. His picture is in many German cathedrals and museums, sometimes with the German eagle on his head. Recent pictures of Hitler, nearly 1,700 years later, show Hitler also with the same emblem on his head. Come on, man. My empress said 5 more minutes. Okay. We're going to talk about rulers. On November 15th, 218 BC, Hannibal, a full-blooded Negro, marching through a conquered territory in Spain and France, performed the astounding feat of crossing the Alps with only 26,000 of his original force of 82,000 men remaining. He defeated Rome, the mightiest military power of that age, who had 1 million men in every battle for the next 15 years. Hannibal is that father of military strategy. His tactics are still taught in the leading military academies of the United States, England, France, Germany, and other lands. Yusuf, a king from Upper Senegal, Africa, saved Moor civilization in Spain in 1086. The Moors were being pushed out by the white Christians of Germanic descent. Yusuf crossed the Strait of Gibraltar with only 15,000 men, most of them pure blacks, and with 10,000 more from the Moors. With 10,000, excuse me, family, with 10,000 more from the Moors met the white king Alfonso VI at Zalaka. The latter had an army of 70,000, nearly 3 times as great, but Yusuf inflicted a terrific defeat on him. We can do all this in wisdom. In 1538, Aska, the great emperor of Songhai, ruled an empire that stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to Lake Chad, larger than Western Europe. His capital was Timbuktu. The First World War in history was started by Abrana, Negro emperor, an ex-slave, when he attacked Mecca, Arabia, in 569 AD. The war lasted more than 1,000 years and stretched from France to beyond China. It brought about the fall of several great empires. One of them the later Roman Empire, capital of Constantinople, in 1453. Muley Ismail, Emperor of Morocco, whose mother was a Negro slave, had 25,000 white slaves captured on the seas or on the coast of Europe and the British Isles to build his palace at the Mykonos. Muley Ismail's stable were the vastest in existence, with stalls for 12,000 horses. Muley Ismail's ships raised the coast of Europe for slaves until his death in 1727. I can go on and on with the wisdom. Slavery. Listen to this, Moors. The word slave was originally applied to white people when we talk about white cargo. That's history. I'm not coming from no perspective. It comes from Slav, S-L-A-V, a Russian people captured by the Germans. The first slaves held in the United States were not black, but white. They were Europeans, mostly British, who died like flies on the slave ships across. On one voyage, 1,100 perished out of 1,500. Another time, 350 out of 400. In Virginia, white servitude was for a limited period, but was sometimes extended to life. In the West Indies, Moors, particularly in the case of the Irish, it was for life. White people were sold in the United States up to the 1826. 50 years later, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Andrew Johnson, President of the United States, was a runaway and was advertised for it in the newspapers. Between 1526 and 1859, Moors, there were 33 slave revolts in the United States, one of which was headed by Nat Turner of Virginia in 1831. With only 6 companions, Turner set out to free 3 million slaves. The United States Marines and 2 warships were sent against him after he killed 55 whites and captured several plantations. The Seminoles, or runaways of mixed Indian and Negro descents of Florida, fought 3 wars with the United States to preserve their freedom. In 1670, Virginia passed a law forbidding Negro from buying white people. This was 51 years after the Negro had arrived in chains. The same law was repeated in 1748. Free Negroes bought white people in such numbers in Louisiana that the state made a similar law in 1818. White children were kidnapped several thousands yearly in the 17th and the 18th centuries and sold into slavery in America and the West Indies. Sometimes they were bootlegged and sold as Negroes. That's where that bootleg comes from too when I say words has duality. White Americans, North and South, were also kidnapped and seduced and sold as Negroes as late as 1859. One of the most celebrated cases of a white person sold as a Negro was Sally Muller, Sally-Muller, who was held in servitude in Louisiana for 26 years. Court after court ruled against her. Finally, her birth certificate was dug up in Germany, and she was freed by the Supreme Court in 1818. Prince Abd el-Rahman, a highly educated grandson of the Emperor of Timbuktu, was captured in battle and sold into slavery in America. Years later, a white doctor who had traveled in his land saw him at Natchez, Mississippi. Raham was freed in 1829, and $4,000 was paid for the liberation of his children. In 1860, there were 487,000 free Negroes in the United States, whom owned slaves. C.D. Wilson estimated that there were 6,230 Negro slaveholders. The tax return of Charleston, S.C., for 1860 showed 132 Negro slaveholders with 390 slaves. The Negro slaveholders, like the white ones, fought to keep their chattels in the Civil War. The Brazilian Emancipation Proclamation of 1888 freed all the slaves on the promulgation. The British Emancipation of 1884, not until 4 years later, while the American Emancipation Proclamation of 1853, when issued Moors, freed those slaves whom Abraham Lincoln had no power to free, and permitted the continued enslavement of those whom he had the power to free. That's science. In Arabia and parts of North Africa, white persons, mostly women, are still held as slaves, are as many Negroes. Sometimes the owners of these white slaves still Negroes, even in war. The Rock of Gibraltar. The Rock of Gibraltar. Write that down, Gibraltar, the symbol of stability. Israel X. It is a corruption of Gabor Tariq, or the monument of Tariq. Tariq, who was a Moor, captured the rock, which was then called Calip or Calp in 711 AD. Later, he conquered southern Spain. Tariq's countrymen thereafter ruled Spain for 700 years, Moors. 700 years. Abraham Hannibal, captured as a slave in Africa, was adopted by Peter the Great as his son and taught military engineering. Later, Hannibal became tutor to the heir to the throne and commander-in-chief of the Russian army. He died in 1782 at the age of 90, owning vast estates and 2,000 white slaves, Moors. Toussaint L'Ouverture and his great mulatto rival, General Rigaud, were both thrown into the same dungeon in France by Napoleon in 1802. Later at St. Helena, Napoleon declared that the imprisonment of Toussaint was a grave political error. Toussaint L'Ouverture had planned after Haiti was free to go to Dahomey, West Africa, and use it as a base from which to fight the slave trade. We could talk about John Francisco, leader of the Haitian blacks in 1791, which was an ex-slave and one superior officer of Overture. We could talk about Napoleon had 12 West Indian Negro generals who served in France, namely General Alexander Dumas, one of Napoleon's officers, Andre Rigaud, Material Bassi, Bartholomew, Muhammad Ahmed, called the Mahid, an ex-waiter of the Sudan, defeated every army that England sent against him. I'm telling you. And I leave you with this, Moors. The most ancient name for so-called black people are Nisu or Nehisu, N-E-H-E-S-U, or Nubian, Ethiopian, or Moor from ancient Egypt, and Negro or Negrita from West Africa. All the above are native words. Negro is probably the oldest, as the Negritos are the oldest known branch of the human race, Moors. Negro come from the river Niger or Niger, however they want to pronounce it. Niger or Nigger found its way in Latin, and since the people from that region were dark-skinned, Niger, Niger, Nigra, Nigrum came to mean black, Moors. Negro, Negrito, Negrita means the people of the great river. Black and colored, like white, are on the other hand European words. Ethiopian and Moor were popular used to describe the so-called blacks until 1500s. When you research in the 1599 Geneva Bible, it don't say Ethiopian or African, it says Moor. Ed Meleket, the Moor. Shakespeare uses Negro only once and uses it synonymously with Moor. Africa comes from the ancient Egyptian Africa or Kafrika, the land of the Kafir. The English word admiral and the French equivalent admiral were adopted as the result of the great admiration held for the Negroid. The sea rovers who used to scour the coast of Europe for slaves as late as the 19th century Moors. It comes from Arim al-Bar, Lord of the Seas, the commander of the sea rovers. The principal port of the latter was Salih, Morocco. A United States squadron under the commander Decatur went to Africa to free the white Americans held there as slaves. S.K. William II had a Negro uncle by adoption. We can go all over with this wisdom, Moors, but I want you to be a philosopher and a study and a research. I love you all. Love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, health, and wealth.